Welcome to another session. In the session I did previously, I talked about how relationships are hard, and I expanded on something that I thought was worth placing on the table, which had to do with the fact that many of us have been programmed by our parents, like seeds, words, fears, worry, doubt, the emotions are placed in our subconscious mind, and therefore we are, in many cases, living out the fears of our parents, although our parents in their lives did not experience such fears. In today's session, I'd like to deviate and talk about something still connected to the major theme, but worthy of some form of introspection. None of us was promised what I call the good life. Now, you define that good life in however you wish, but none of us was promised the good life. What we were given, or what we've all been given, is the opportunity to partake in an adventure of life. And like in a jungle, an adventure, you have the opportunity to make life meaningful, to make life fulfilling, to play the cards that life deals you with grace and gratitude, or you have the opportunity to make life miserable and sad and sorrowful and unbearable. The way we do that will be based on the choices and decisions we make. Now think about a jungle, for example. Imagine if I dropped you in the jungle. I'll use a good example. Many years ago, and you will find this to be still available, Channel 4 aired something of a documentary series. It was called Bear Grylls. A fascinating series of documentaries. And they went through season 1 and season 2 and season 3 and season 4. The whole idea was to see if we could take modern men and women, place them in an island in the Pacific, and to see how we would either survive or thrive, and whether we could survive to the end of the period allocated, surviving, thriving, or self-destructing. It was a fascinating set of series. In the first, we saw people of different ages and groups. In the second, we saw separation of sexes, men on one side and women on the other side, two separate islands. And we saw how, when together, we have to work together. We are interdependent. We are not independent. And the best way to thrive is to work together. Now, this is not a concept that is new. Decades and years and hundreds of years ago, a study was run. The study indicated that if there are 10 of us, and I get a piece of apple, and we all went hunting, but I found a piece of apple, and the 9 other people did not find anything. If I ate my apple just for myself, and we carried on, what the documentary indicated, based on the study, was the longevity of the entire group of 10 people, myself included, was much shorter than if I took the piece of apple that I found and equally distributed the apple to all the people who were part of the entire group. Fascinating. The reason I say fascinating, now, forgive me, I have an incoming call. Let me see how I can sort this out. Okay. Forgive me for that. What this indicates was a simple thing, that you live longer if you share the little you have, rather than if you consume what you have alone. And therefore, the concept of interdependence and working as a group was far superior than independence and working as an individual person solo. Fascinating discovery. The Bear Grylls episode number 2, showed both the female and the male cabs had the opportunity to work together. And whenever they worked together and minimized conflict and came to a conclusion or a decision collectively, which everyone bought into, the opportunity to extend their survival timeline was much greater than when they went their separate ways. Fascinating. And the reason I use that example is to draw your attention to something that I think is very, very important. Human beings are no different to our biological brothers and sisters, the Homo sapien species. And if you were to look into the animal kingdom, as a matter of fact, some weeks ago, this was a true story, but one that I thought was a very useful way of people learning how human beings are built in our innermost core. I found, for those of us and those of you who live in cities, there is very little concept of how things work. We're so disconnected based on technology. We're disconnected from the natural universe, natural kingdom, and animals and how things work in the wild. And on this particular instance, here I am, and we're in a field. And as we're walking through the farm, there's a cry out by a little lamb, a sheep. It's just been born. It had been born, and its mother just abandoned the sheep. And here I am. And so we cross over the field. Following the sound, we find the sheep. Now, I'm not alone. My beloved and I, we saw that as a useful opportunity to learn something new. Now, all of us, as part of a group, walked over to the field, and we saw this little sheep. We saw the mother walking away. I think she had been injured as part of the childbirth. Couldn't give an F. In any case, this is what I found fascinating. As we left, we stood at a far distance and we watched. Next to this little sheep that had just been born was another sheep mother with the 2 sheep that she had actually born, 2 little lambs. As this little sheep moved towards the other mother, we observed as a group something that I think you had to see it to understand. There is a viciousness in the animal kingdom. There's a protective nature in the animal kingdom. As this little sheep moved closer to the mother, the other mother, not her mother or its mother, as he started to graze towards the other woman, the other sheep, female sheep, the female sheep attacked it and killed it, simply purely on the basis that it was coming around this turf. The group was surprised. And I said, well, this should not be a surprise to you. We understand this in the animal kingdom. If a lion walks into a wild pack and there are other male lions, there's a fight that takes place. The group that wins, or the lion that wins, takes over the pride of lions. If those pride of lions have offsprings, it kills the offsprings because it doesn't want to go hunting for another man's seed. But seeing that happen amongst sheep and little lambs was just an indication of the consistency of what takes place in the animal kingdom. The protectiveness. Now, human beings are different from animals. Animals are driven by instinct and the genetic code. Human beings, we have a will. We have emotions. We have an intellect. We have a spirit. We can choose. And therefore, we make of our environment what we want. The choice to be interdependent is a necessary survival instinct for human beings. The need within the other part of our brothers and sisters in the animal kingdom may be different. And what I have been observing is, for some strange reason, of late, in the modern West, we tend to have people, particularly women, behaving in a manner that is not even consistent with the animals who are part of the Homo sapien group or even other parts of the animal kingdom. For example, we have women who will say boldly, I don't need a man. I'll have children, but I don't need a man. Now, if you've been around farms or the wild, the first thing you notice is the moment a mother has a child, whether that be a sheep or any other animal, they are the most vulnerable. The idea that human beings, particularly women, can say, despite being the most vulnerable, that they do not need men, whilst having children and not being protected and having no form of protection around them, is fanciful. But that is simply a product of the fact that we've civilized the West so much so that we do not have a need for protection and provision. The state can do all of that on our behalf. So the value of men in most women's eyes is trivialized. So much so that these women can say, well, I've had children now, and now I can go into the marketplace and find a man, a stepfather. They don't put it in those terms, but they're looking for a man. And I've said to a number of women, do you not understand that in the animal kingdom, it's not in a biological, biological instinct for a lion to provide food for another lion's cub. Same as you have in sheep. It's not in the instinct of a mother who's just had her 2 lambs to provide or to allow another sheep's newly born lamb to nurse close to his small territory. Now, this is a field of green. It was fascinating to see that mother attack that little child and kill that little child. Why? It's not in a human or an animal's nature to look after the children of other people. Now, the reason I say this is, and I should make it clear, I am instructed, and I hold on to that instruction, to look after the widows and the orphans. We'll always do that. And I put them in a different category. What we've created, unfortunately, in the West is a deviation from everything that has always worked. A self-absorbed, selfish form of self. A self that does not want to be put in boundaries or have discipline or structure. A free self, so much so that we are encouraging women not to take relationships seriously, to actually espouse and proclaim and declare their independence from men and how they do not want men, but how they need that sperm to reproduce. And when they reproduce, they believe they can survive and thrive in the animal kingdom, independently and alone. And when the time comes, they can pluck a man to be a stepfather. And they see all of that to be natural. And they see the traditional 2-parent family where people work together with shared goals to be abnormal. Find it fascinating. Now, let me leave today's session with a few statements. Number 1, we were raised by our parents in such a way that we are living out the fears, mostly of our mothers. Because many of us have been raised in the West with our fathers. And unfortunately, the generations that came before us, our mothers, failed us. I think one of the most important decisions women have to make is judge their mothers just as harshly as they do judge their fathers, absent or otherwise. And when you've gone through that process of judging your mothers just as harshly, share your thoughts with your mothers and then be prepared to forgive them. Give them the same grace as you would and as you give yourself. But judge them as harshly. Share your thoughts about how they have failed you. And then forgive. Let go and let God. Because until you do that, what tends to happen is we reproduce based on our fears and our worries and our doubts. If you do not confront peacefully, respectfully, but if you do not confront that reality, which is that your mothers have failed you, just as your fathers, those who were present, have failed you, you will find you will replicate the dysfunction that you've created for yourself into your children. You will miss the mark. And therefore, the sins of the fathers and mothers will live unto the children, even up into the third and the fourth generation. I hope that's been useful.